Okay, so we're going to take a look at Pythagoras' theorem. Pythagoras' theorem only applies to right angle triangles. So if you've got a question and it doesn't have a right angle triangle, then Pythagoras' theorem is not what you're going to use to solve that. So this triangle here we have has a right angle in it, a 90-degree angle. So Pythagoras' theorem states that c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. That's the theory. So if you look at a right angle triangle here, the C represents the hypotenuse or the longest side of your right angle triangle, and it is opposite the right angle as well. So it's always directly opposite the right angle. The A and the B are the two shorter sides, and it doesn't matter which is which, as long as the two shorter sides are either A or B. So that means that if we were to square the C, it would have the same value as if you squared A and B and added them together. So we're going to take a look at this in the form of an example. So our first question here, we have a right angle triangle, and it is 3 meters across the top, and it is 5 meters down the side, and we are trying to find the hypotenuse, the longest side. So the question here says, find the length of the missing side of the right angle triangles, give your answer to 1 decimal place. So we're going to first of all write out the wee equation that we already looked at. So c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. So c is the bit that we're missing, and you can keep it as c or you can change it to x because it's the hypotenuse that we're trying to find. So x squared is equal to, and then we'll put in the two shorter sides, so 3 squared plus 5 squared. So work each of those parts out now. 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9. 5 squared is 5 times 5, which is 25. And then you're going to need to add those together. So x squared is equal to 34. So to work out x then, so we've got x squared 34, but we want x. So in order to work out x, we're going to have to take the square root of 34. So you'll need to use your calculator for that because 34 doesn't have a natural square root. So the square root of 34 is equal to it comes up in your calculator as 5.830, etc. And to 1 decimal place, as it says in the question, that would be x is equal to 5.8, because the next number after the 8 is a 3, and that means we would round down to 5.8. Now, at this point, you should pause the video and try and use the example that I have now given you to answer the next two questions, the red triangle and the blue triangle. Once you have tried those, then replay the video or press play again, and I will go through each of those with you, and you can check if you are getting those right. Okay, so we'll move on to the red one now. So again, start off by writing out your equation. C squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. So our a in this case is 5 squared and our b is 6 squared. So c squared is equal to 25 plus 36. 5 5s is 25 and 6 6 are 36. Then you're going to need to add those together to get your total. So 25 plus 36 gives you a total of 61. So c squared is 61. We now want to find out c, and in order to do that, we're going to have to take the square root of 61. So again, that's something you're going to need your calculator for. So square root of 61 is equal to 7.81, 0, 2, 4, etc. But we want to do this to 1 decimal place, as it says in the question. So the 1 tells us we're going to round down, so our answer would be 7.8. All right, and our third example here, so this is the blue triangle. So again, start off with your equation. C squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. And then we're going to fill in our numbers for a and b, our shorter sides. So 3 squared plus 2 squared. Next row then, we're going to square our numbers. So 3 squared is 9 plus 2 squared is 4. And then our next row, we're going to add those up. So 9 plus 4 is giving us an answer of 13. That's what c squared is. We want to now find out what c is. So we're going to take the square root, which is the opposite of squaring, of 13. So again, calculator is needed for that. So the square root of 13 is equal to 3.605 And if we round that to one decimal place, the 0 tells us to round down, so it would be 3.6. Now, another thing that I haven't included here is our units, and you need to put that in with your answers. That would be centimetres. These are all centimetres, so we need to put our centimetres in with our answers. So that's how you find the hypotenuse, the longest side. Now, if we've got an example here of an exam style question where we are asked to find the hypotenuse. So we've got a TV screen, and the bottom of the TV screen is 45 centimetres and up the side is 34 centimetres. And it says here, a rectangular television screen has a width of 45 centimetres and a height of 34. It says that this is not drawn accurately to scale. And then it says, work out the length of the diagonal of the screen. So we have your diagonal labelled here, and it says, give your answer correct to the nearest centimetre. So again, just like we have done before, we're going to write out our equation first of all. Now, at this point, you can pause the video and you can go through this yourself if you think you're confident to do that. If not, you can watch me help you get you started. So we've got our c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So looking at our television screen, we have our 45 here and our 34, and these are your shorter sides, and the diagonal is your hypotenuse, your longer side. There is a little right angle in here, so there's your right angle, and opposite that is your hypotenuse. That's what we're trying to work out. So that means our A and our B are 45 and 34. So we're going to write in here c squared equals 45 squared plus 34 squared. So we need to work those out, and at this point it might be a good idea to use a calculator to do 45 squared and also your 34 squared. So 45 squared is 2025 plus 34 squared is 1156. Now our next step is to add those together. So 2025 plus 1156 gives you a total of 3181. So that's what c squared is. We're going to need to take the square root of that to find out c. So c is equal to the square root of 3181. So again, the calculator for that. So 3181, taking the square root. And this is comes up as c equals 56.40035. Now it hasn't told us here, it has, give your answer correct to the nearest centimetre. So we're going to round this to the nearest whole centimetre. We're going to get rid of the decimal part. So because this is a 4, that means we're going to round down. So it means that c would be equal to 56, and we'll put in our units there, centimetres. We're on now to looking at the shorter side. So you'll notice in these 3 examples here that I have put up that we have the hypotenuse. So if you're looking here, this is opposite the right angle. We have the hypotenuse. Opposite the right angle, we have the hypotenuse. So in these, we have the hypotenuse. So if we already have the c squared, that means we're trying to figure out a or b. So we're going to need to do the opposite of what we've been doing so far. So in fact, we're going to be taking away. So in order to work out our missing side, we're going to do, let's say the missing side is a squared is equal to c squared, take away b squared. So in all the other examples, we were adding, but on these ones, we need to take away because we are finding a shorter side. So we're doing the opposite of what we've previously been doing, the inverse. So we're going to now replace our letters with the numbers that we know. So a squared is the missing one, or we could call that x if you like. So that's this one up here. It is missing. And the c squared is the hypotenuse. So our hypotenuse here is 13. So 13 squared, take away. And the other side that we know is 12. So we're going to put in here 12 squared. So a squared is equal to, so you need to square your 13. 13 squared is 169. And you need to square your 12. 12 squared, 12 times 12 is 144. Now we need to take those away. So the only thing we've done differently so far is the taking away. Everything else we've squared our numbers and we're now going to take them away. So 169, take away 144, gives us an answer of 25. Now to find a, we're going to need to take the square root of 25. So the square root of 25 is 5, because 5 times 5 is 25. So that's 5 centimetres. Okay, so I want you to pause the video now and try using this first example that I've given you to solve the red and the blue triangle. And then once you have tried that, we will work through it together. Okay, so for our red triangle, we're going to write out our formula first. So a squared is equal to c squared minus b squared. So a squared is equal to c is the hypotenuse. So if we're looking here at opposite our right angle is 10 centimetres. So 10 squared, take away, and the other side is 6. So a squared is equal to 10 squared is 100. 10 times 10 is 100. 6 squared is 6 times 6, which is 36. So take those away now. A squared equals 100 take away 36 is 64. And our final step, as always, is to find out what a is on its own. So we're going to need to take the square root of 64. So you can use your calculator for that. Square root of 64 is equal to 8 eighths or 64. So that is 8 centimetres. And on to our last example here. So the blue triangle. So write out your equation again. A squared equals c squared. Take away b squared. Alright, so a squared is equal to, our hypotenuse is this one here, the 25 centimetres. So we're going to square that and take away the 21 centimetres squared. Okay, 25 squared is 625, so 20 times 25 is 625. 21 squared, so 21 times by 21 is 441. I'm going to need to take those away now. So 625, take away 441 is 184. And that's what a squared is. We want to know what a is, so we're going to take the square root of that. Square root of 184. Using your calculator, it comes up as 13.564. 564, etc. Now we're going to round that to one decimal place like we did in the last question, even though it hasn't been stated here, but we're going to round to one decimal place, so that'll be 13.6. We would round up because 6 tells us that we need to round up, so 5 changes into a 6. Put in our units, centimetres, and that is how you find the shorter side. So remember, when you're finding the hypotenuse, the longest side, you will square and add your two shorter sides. But if you're finding a shorter side like we are here, you'll have to take away. So your hypotenuse squared, take away one of your shorter sides squared. We'll take a little look at an exam style question. Now, at the start I said Pythagoras only applies to right angle triangles. So in this case we actually have an isosceles triangle. So we're only going to use part of it to answer this question. So it says work out the length in centimetres of AM. So that is this line down the middle, AM, we want to work that out. And it says give your answer correct to 2 decimal places. So we're going to round this to 2 decimal places. Now, if you want at this point, you can pause the video and try this on your own. And then after you've given it a go on pen and paper, you can then come back and check that you've done it correctly. So we only need part of this. We're only going to use this side here because that gives us our right angle triangle. We're going to ignore this half on this side here. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to decide whether we're adding or taking away. So if you look here, we have opposite the right angle, we have 7 centimetres. So we do have the hypotenuse, we have the longest side. So that means we're going to need to take away. So our equation is going to be a squared is equal to c squared, take away b squared. All right, so let's put in the numbers we have. So c is the hypotenuse. We already decided we have that. That's 7. So we're going to put in here 7 squared. Take away b. Now b is one of the other sides. We currently don't have this side, the AM, that we're trying to work out. We can work this one out. Now just remember, we're only going from M to C. We're not going the full way across, so we don't need all 8 centimetres. We'd only use half of that. So we're going to put in here 4 squared. So the bottom of the triangle is 4 and the hypotenuse is 7, and we're trying to work out the side AM. So if we work through that, then a squared is equal to, well, 7 squared is 49, 4 squared is 16, So a squared is equal to 49, take off your 16 is 33. So we are going to take the square root of that now. So a is equal to the square root of 33. So a is equal to, and that's something you'll want to use your calculator for, square root of 33 is equal to 5.74456, etc. Now it says in the question we want to do this to 2 decimal places. So a is equal to 5.74 because the 4 tells us to round down, and this is centimetres, so make sure you include your units. So in goes centimetres. Now for our last part of our Pythagoras. Alright, and our final set of questions here, some of them you have to work out the hypotenuse and some of them you have to work out one of the shorter sides. Now it is really important that you know which you are going to be doing because that affects whether you're going to be adding or taking away. So you can now try these 3 questions if you want by pausing the video. But I'm going to work through each of them here once you start to play again. Right, on our first one, if you look very carefully here, we have the right angle here, and opposite that we have the hypotenuse. So if we already have the hypotenuse, that means we know what the C is. So that means we're going to need to take away. We want a smaller answer, so taking away would be what we would need to do. So we're going to write out a formula for that. So a squared equals c squared, which is the hypotenuse, take away our b squared. So a squared is equal to, the hypotenuse is 5, so 5 squared take away 4 squared. 4 squared being your other side that you have. So a squared is equal to 5 squared is 25, 4 squared is 16, so take away 16. A squared is equal to, so you need to do now your 25 take away your 16, and 25 take away 16 is 9. That's what a squared is. We want to work out a, so we need to take the square root. So the square root of 9 is 3, because 3 times 3 is 9. And this is meters, this particular question, so we'll put in meters as our units. If we move on to the next one now, if you look at this one, our right angle is here. And opposite that, we have our missing sides. That means we're missing the hypotenuse, the longest side. So we're going to need to add. So our equation this time will be c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. So we don't have the c, because we don't have the hypotenuse. We do have the 2 shorter sides. So we're going to put in here 5 squared plus a 6 squared. 5 squared is 25. 5 times 5. 6 squared is 36. 6 times 6. And then we're going to need to add those together. So 25 plus 36 is 61. That's what c squared is. Then we're going to need to figure out c by taking the square root of 61. So we'll do square root of 61 on our calculators, and that gives us an answer of c equals 7.8102, etc. And it says up here in the question that we are to round this to 2 decimal places. So if we round that to 2 decimal places, it would be c is equal to 7.81, and because there's a 0 after that, it's going to stay as 81. And the units for that question is centimetres, so make sure you include those in. On to our last question then, we have here, and there is our right angle. Opposite it, we have our 3 centimetres. So we do have the hypotenuse, so this time we're going to need to take away. So our equation is going to be a squared equals c squared, take away b squared. So a squared is our missing side. The hypotenuse, c, is 3. So 3 squared, take away, and one of our shorter sides there is 2. So 2 squared. 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is 9. 2 squared is 2 times 2, which is 4. So then we'll take those away. 9 take away 4 is 5. And then we want to, in our last step, find out what the square root of that is. So the square root of 5. And the square root of 5 using your calculator is 2.23606, etc. And we're going to round that to 2 decimal places, as it says in the question. So 2.24, because the 6 tells us to round up. So it's 2.24, and the units are centimetres. Okay, that's a brief look through Pythagoras' theorem. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments below and I can come back to you on that.